Hello and welcome to Crimewatch UK. Now, if you've ever worried or complained about crime, this is your chance to do something about it.
Good evening. We don't often get the chance to really celebrate on Crimewatch, but tonight we can make an exception. It's our 10th birthday and our 100th programme, and that was how our first broadcast began back in 1984. Later on, we'll be taking a look back at some of the 1,200 or so cases we've covered, which viewers have been directly responsible for solving.
But first tonight, an unsolved murder, at least unsolved till now. The victim, Larry Burt from Ramsgate in Kent, was so well liked, according to a friend, we'll probably have to have St Paul's Cathedral for the funeral.
Larry, you got those invoices?
Won't be a minute. Janet, can you come and have a look at this? The dropout's far too high in this relay. You reckon it's that one? Yeah, all right.
Larry Burt worked as a quality assurance controller. Part of his job was to test products before they were sent out to clients.
What could I do without you? Shouldn't that stay here? Thank you. Open your eyes. Can you hear me? Obviously not. Right, he's unconscious. What do we do now?
Mouth's mouth.
You're jumping the gun. We've got to check for breathing first.
Larry was a branch officer of the Red Cross and twice a year led courses in first aid.
I run the Red Cross here in Margate. I very often help Larry with his lectures. He was full of fun, he was loved by his students, and many of them have stayed friends over the years.
Now, clearly there's nothing happening in this poor chap. So, only then do you follow the ventilation procedures. Right, change the subject. I need a casualty. Who fancies being tied up? Jean?
Oh, dear.
Need a hand? Larry! How are you doing? You just got back then?
What's this then?
Ah,
Living again?
done it for the week, my engine blew up.
We've known Larry now for about 25 years. He lost his parents during the war in an air raid, and now, of course, his adopted parents are also dead. So he was totally alone. He had no relatives at all, and he just adopted practically everybody of his friends as relatives, and he had a heck of a lot of friends.
Yes, in fact, I would say that his death has been a great personal tragedy to a great many people. We had an awful lot in common.
You had a common interest in art, didn't you?
Oh, yes, we had a common interest in art. Lots of things we were interested in and encouraged to be interested in by Larry.
He introduced us to bird watching, basically.
Yes, you know, he was enthusiastic about all sorts of things, and he managed to convey it to people. He had a zest for life, without a doubt.
Oh, well, look, I won't see you tomorrow, because I've gone up London to have a mooch around. Gonna take this on the train. So, I'm going to see you Sunday, though.
Right,
OK?
OK,
fine.
Bye.
Yep.
On Saturday, the 26th of February, Larry boarded the 9:52 from Dumpton Park to London.
Line tickets, please.
Oh, sorry, cheap day return to Victoria, please.
£15.70. Thank you.
It's not known where in London Larry meant to visit, but he clearly intended to return that same day.
Ticket. Line tickets, please.
20 minutes later, the same guard, Ian Williams, remembers seeing someone sitting opposite Larry.
Although I didn't see them talking, it looked to me as if I'd interrupted something. I remember she had a 5-day return London to Whitstable.
Larry was just the sort of person who might have started up a conversation with a stranger. If that woman was you, and if he mentioned his plans for the day, it's obviously important. At any rate, please call us. Larry visited London every couple of months, but from here it's all conjecture. He probably cycled from Victoria out towards the East End. In the past, he's talked of visiting St Catherine's Dock, as another of his interests was boats and chandlery. Maybe you saw Larry cycling around Wapping that afternoon. In Wapping High Street stands the Town of Ramsgate pub. Larry may have been there in the past. Did you see him here in February? Larry had binoculars for bird watching and was an accomplished photographer. He was also a remarkable artist and would often turn his drawings into cards for his friends. Perhaps you noticed Larry by the river that afternoon. With his sketchpad, camera and binoculars, he would have been distinctive. The next day, overlooking the river at the rear of a warehouse known as the Old Pump House in St Catherine's Way in Wapping, Larry's body was discovered. It's likely he was murdered in this yard above the river, probably the day before. He'd been strangled.
In fact, David Inspector Michael, he was strangled with a scarf left at the scene, identical to this one. And it wasn't his scarf?
No, it wasn't his scarf. The person who strangled him would have been the owner of that scarf. The scarf was well worn, so they've had it for some time, and we'd like anybody who knows somebody who went out with a scarf similar to this, who came home without it, to get in touch with us.
26th of February, Saturday 26th of February, possibly Sunday the 27th of February. The bike that Larry had is missing. I mean, it's conceivable that whoever killed him came home with a bike as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's the metallic blue Man's Abbey Racer Tourer bicycle. It was modified since Larry had it, and it had chrome mudguards, back pannier, and the handlebar tape was blue.
Now, what other things were taken? Because you suspect the motive is robbery, and quite a lot of belongings disappeared.
There's a good chance. We would really like anybody who knows about the other missing property, which includes a Swallow binoculars, which is adjustable.
Like these?
That's correct.
These are 8x21s.
Yes, also a 35mm automatic compact camera with built-in zoom lens. His personal belongings in his wallet, identity cards, a black rucksack with possibly sketching materials. Anybody who's had this property, who knows anything about it, please get in touch with us.
Now, in truth, knowing that the stuff was stolen, they might be quite reluctant to get in touch with you if it's passed through their hands. They don't want to be done for receiving stolen property.
Okay. Obviously, that's quite understandable, but really we're just concerned with Larry's murder, and we would encourage these people to come forward. Please get in touch with us.
Now, since you don't know really where he went between Victoria Station and being found near St Catherine's Dock, you need to find anybody who met him at all that day, or perhaps any other day in London when he was on his...
We know he had a good knowledge of Wapping, the East End. Also, he had a broader knowledge of London. But anybody who was with him that weekend or knows anybody who was with Larry, please get in touch with us.
Inspector, thank you. If you can help in any way with this case, the number here in the studio is 0500 600 600, or you can ring the incident room direct. That's on 071 488 5241. 071 488 5241.
When Crimewatch began 10 years back, we wondered how to cover crimes which had too few points of appeal to merit a full reconstruction. The answer was for police officers themselves to make brief appeals directly to the public. Incident Desk began with Chief Inspector David Hatcher and WPC Helen Phelps. Helen's now in Civvies. She joined the Crimewatch production team, and Mr. Hatcher, still with Kent Police, has been promoted. Here with our 100th edition of Incident Desk are Superintendent David Hatcher and Detective Constable Jackie Hames.
You may remember last month we asked for your help to find the killer of Barry Stubbings. He was murdered on Tuesday the 29th of March in Spitalfields, London. Well, since that appeal, we've uncovered new information from the night of the murder. This security video shows Barry with a man at around 8:30 that night in Artillery Passage near Liverpool Street Station. The man was wearing a baseball cap and a dark bomber-style jacket. Do you recognise him? Unfortunately, the video is rather obscured by the captions, but we'll take another look at him in a minute. Shortly before, this man was walking towards Barry in the direction of the station. If that was you, you'll have vital information. Remember, it was 8:30 p.m, and as we can see, Barry and the man appear moments later. As they cross the road, the video reveals a crowd of people near the pavement. We believe this was part of a Jack the Ripper walking tour, who must also have seen the two men. So please, if you can help, call us here in the studio on 0500 600 600 or ring the incident room direct on 071 488 6663. That's 071 488 6663.
Jason Comerford was 21 when he was killed this year in Manchester. He lived alone and worked locally at a textile company. At around 2:45 a.m. on Friday the 25th of February, Jason was stabbed near the corner of George Leeds Street and Great Ancoat Street. A short time earlier, he was seen talking to a man near the Daily Express building. If that was you, please come forward. The knife used in the attack is distinctive. It has a black Teflon-coated blade with the words "The Hunter" printed on the handle. We'd like to talk to anyone in the Manchester area who recognises it. A substantial reward is being offered, so if you know anything about the knife or the attack, please call Greater Manchester Police on 061 856 5454. That's 061, the code for Manchester, 856 5454.
Next, we need your help to solve a series of armed robberies in South London. Since November, two similar hold-ups have occurred at post offices in Wimbledon and Hampton. The most recent happened in Tangley Shopping Centre, Hampton, on Monday the 18th of April. On this occasion, the robbers escaped in this beige Mini, which they drove through crowds of shoppers in the pedestrianised precinct. If you saw it, you'd remember it because the cash box security system had been activated and red smoke was billowing from the car. The gunman is distinctive. He's 6'3" and was wearing a tweed trilby hat. He's between 40 and 45, has dark hair and is heavily built. If you have any information or you recognise the man, please call the Metropolitan Police on 081 577 4371. That's 081 577 4371.
Most of us are very unlikely to become the victims of serious crime, but in our next case, lightning struck twice. Our reconstruction takes place at Oddie Wilson's Jewellers in Harrogate.
Good morning, Oddie Wilson Jewellers. Can I help you?
Andrew Smith has worked in the jewellery business for 8 years. Recently, he became the manager here at Harrogate.
That's the one. Thank you.
Just like to try that on.
That's nice.
This is 11:45. A group of 4 customers were looking at engagement rings. If that was you, you may have valuable information.
Well, as the manager, I'd usually spend Monday morning doing paperwork, but on this particular day, it was a little bit busy downstairs. Thanks. Bye-bye. Did you get that sale just in?
No, I'm hoping they'll be back on Saturday.
When I saw the man at the doorway, I just thought he looked like one of the jewellery reps, really.
Get down! Down on the ground!
It's very difficult to describe. Your adrenaline's going, you're frightened at the same time. You almost feel as though you should do something. But what we're told, just let them get on with the job, let them have whatever they want. And as long as everyone's safe, then that's fine.
Don't move. Stay there.
Good morning, it's Julia I was just on my way home from town after I'd picked up a few bits and bobs, driving past the jeweller's shop on King's Road, and I noticed something going on inside. I saw a man, and he was grabbing things from the display and kept looking over his shoulder. I got quite scared and my legs started to shake with fear. I knew I had to get help. I drove off to the first place I could stop to call the police.
We've got enough, we've got enough. Plenty of time, BJ. Plenty of time.
Stuart Marshall was on his way to work at Harrogate Turkish Baths. He saw the robbers drive up King's Road towards Harrogate Conference Centre. There was a pram and nursery fair on and the town was very busy.
I memorised the car registration number and carried on walking and noticed that Oddie Wilson's jeweller's window had been wrecked.
The robbers abandoned their car half a mile away in Studley Road.
When I saw they'd pulled up next to my dad's Jag, I thought he'd be mad because he'd taken his parking space. I saw them walk off through the ginnel.
Since that latest robbery, obviously security arrangements have been changed at the shop. We're particularly interested in hearing from anyone who recognises the gunman. He's between 40 and 45, about 5'10", heavily built with a ruddy complexion. He referred to his accomplice as BJ, so if you know anyone of that name, please do call. Their getaway car was parked on King's Road at around 11:45. It's a silver Vauxhall Cavalier that had been stolen 10 days earlier from Hexham in Northumbria. It was bearing false plates, J324DGH. Do you remember making them up? That's J324DGH. Oddie Wilson's has been targeted twice in the past 6 months, and similarities between both robberies suggest they're connected. As we've just seen, the latest attack happened in broad daylight on a busy market day in Harrogate Town Centre. Someone must have seen something. If you did, please ring the incident room on 0423 539 457. That's 0423, the code for Harrogate, 539 457.
Our colleagues in Warwickshire are appealing for anyone who might have witnessed an attack on 2 men at a pub in Warwick. At about 8:20 a.m. on Saturday the 23rd of April, 2 men went into the King's Head at Wellesbourne, a pub used by traders who work at the nearby market. The men approached 2 workers, sprayed them with an aerosol and escaped with their briefcase. One of the robbers was in his mid-30s, 6 foot and medium build, with straight dark hair and a dark moustache. His accomplice is in his late 20s and 5'8". Feigning an injury, he was holding a towel over his left eye. He was also wearing a light blue T-shirt. The attackers escaped in a stolen black Ford Orion, bearing the false registration D71 SKB. If you saw the vehicle or recognised this man, please contact our colleagues in Warwickshire on 0789 414 111. That's 0789, the code for Stratford upon Avon, 414 111.
Of course, you can call us here in the studio, 0500 600 600. One of the advances in Crimewatch UK's 10 years is that calls to us are free, so do use that number if you want. It's a free call, 0500 600 600. Last month, Aladdin's Cave proved successful once again at reuniting owners with their cherished possessions. We featured a small part of the gigantic haul recovered by the Metropolitan Police in their Operation Bumblebee. So far, 15 pieces we've shown have been identified, including an enamel on copperwork that turned out to have been stolen from the Royal College of Surgeons. A couple in Cornwall saw a painting of theirs. They drove up to London to collect it, and there they found another item that was theirs. If you're in London, you might like to go to the next Operation Bumblebee Roadshow, which features thousands of recovered items. It's on the 23rd to the 24th of June at Fairfield Halls in Wellesley Road in Croydon.
As we say quite often on this programme, cases where a person is murdered by someone unknown to them are very rare. Our next appeal is sadly one of the exceptions. We've changed the name of the key witness in the reconstruction which follows, which takes place in Wakefield on the day of the murder. It's Tuesday, 15th of March. Wendy Speaks had lived here for nearly 11 years. Every morning she followed the same routine before she left for work.
My mum was very happy living on her own. She had lots of friends, but she was a very private person. She kept herself to herself. And really, she didn't have any particular best friends as such. It was more myself and my sister. It was the three of us together, really. My mum used to call us the Three Musketeers, and she was like the big sister. I was very proud to have her as my mum. She always took care about how she looked and her house. Her house was always very smart and neat, and she got everything she wanted in her life.
Wendy was the receptionist at a marketing company on the outskirts of Wakefield. She set off for the bus stop each morning at about 8:30. An hour later, less than a mile from Wendy's house, Julie Smith was waiting for her bus to work.
I noticed this man coming towards me. He passed by really close. I remember he was acting strange, looking about him a lot. By then my bus had arrived and I didn't see him again after that.
Look, I'm sorry about this, David. It's just that with Tracy living down south and I'm 52 next birthday.
Recently, Wendy had decided to leave Wakefield, and at work that afternoon, she handed in her notice.
And thanks for all the work you've done for us.
Oh, thanks, David. Thank you.
It's now 5 o'clock. Julie had finished work and was on her way home. As the bus pulled up at her stop, she herself didn't notice the man she'd seen that morning still hanging around.
I realised that he was watching the young lady what lives next door, and he stood there for a moment.
Hello, I was wondering if you could help me. I've been walking around for 2 hours trying to find Flanshaw Drive. Do you have any idea where it is?
I'm not quite sure. I think it might be down off Flanshaw Road.
He was acting strange, shifting around, and that's when I remembered him from the morning. I realised he was lying about the amount of time I'd been in the area. It made me nervous.
I didn't get all that. Could you get me a pen and paper?
I'm better off just saying it to you.
I remember he looked in his late 30s. He had brown eyes and was sort of medium build. I think he had a local accent.
Turn left down by the hotel.
By now I was really scared and I didn't know what I was saying. I thought he might push me inside.
Could I come in and use your phone?
No, definitely not. Anyway, my boyfriend's in the kitchen and he wouldn't like it. Look, I'm really sorry. I can't help you anymore.
I never normally open the door to strangers, but I suppose he caught me off guard.
Wendy's bus from work would have arrived at Wakefield town centre at around 6 o'clock. From here, it was just a short walk home. You may have seen her walking along Bourne Lane. This silk screen printer was nearing the end of his shift. The factory is directly across the street from Wendy's house.
I was looking out the window. The only reason why they caught me eye is because I've never seen anybody call at the house before. I'm pretty sure the woman lives here, but I've never seen the man before.
Perhaps the man was going through the same routine. Perhaps he'd asked Wendy for pen and paper.
Hey!
I remember being called away to the machine for a few minutes. When I returned to the window, the guy was leaving. Didn't think much of it at the time.
Wendy's body was discovered the next day when she failed to turn up for work. She'd been stabbed several times.
One pair of blue shoes.
A pair of shoes at the scene didn't belong to Wendy. And some of Wendy's own shoes had been disturbed.
We've all been affected so deeply, it's more than you ever imagine. Our life is just on hold, really, until the man responsible is caught. Some days we're very angry, and some days we're just numb. And it's just my mum was such a big part of our lives that it's just difficult to see how your life can be normal again.
Is this working?
I just miss her all the time. She's on my mind all the time.
And may the love you share today be always of the best. These moments you will treasure because they mean the most. So let us raise our glasses while I propose a toast to the bride and groom.
Bride and groom.
Well, that was just last September at Wendy's daughter's wedding. Detective Superintendent Taylor, what was the motive for Wendy's death?
I'm quite satisfied that when this man knocked on Wendy's door, his intention was to sexually assault her, which he did, and kill her. And he came prepared and brought certain items with him to do that.
One of those items was a pair of shoes. What's the significance of those shoes?
Well, the shoes are vitally important to the inquiry, and it is very important that we find the owner of these shoes. They were left outside a charity shop in Wakefield on Saturday, the 12th of March. The assistant at the shop found them in a bag outside, took them in, priced them up, and placed them on the shelf, and does remember a man purchasing them later on in the day.
So that was just 3 days before the murder?
That's right, yes.
Do you know what size these are?
No.
Could you try them on for me, please? Do you mind?
No.
It's too small for me.
Why, what size are you?
7. These must be a 5 or 6.
OK, I'll take them.
Now, we didn't use the actual pair of shoes in the film there. What did the actual pair of shoes look like? We've got a picture of them there.
Yes, the actual shoes were last manufactured perhaps 6 years ago and have RP Ellen Oxford Street on the inside.
So it's very important that the owner should contact you if
Yes.
they recognise that.
The owner who got rid of those shoes wherever in Wakefield, please contact us.
You need to confirm that the man who tried those shoes on is the man you're looking for.
We do indeed.
He also brought a piece of candlewick material with him.
Yes, this was part of what he brought to the scene. It is a candlewick bedspread, and firms in the area of Wakefield actually cut these up into rags and they are sold. And it might be another link in the chain to identify the man.
And a pair of stockings that he brought too.
Yes, he prepared a pair of stockings and tied loops in them about 15 inches down from the top, which, although he didn't use them, would have fitted over someone's wrists. And it may be that someone in the past can piece that together.
What sort of man do you think would commit a crime like this?
Well, we've spoken to offender profilers and witnesses, and we've put together what we think is a picture of this man. He didn't alarm Wendy, so he would be of normal appearance and voice. Normal intelligence. I think that he may be local, although I don't discount that he could be just a visitor to the area. One of the witnesses described the possibility of some dark bands around the top of the arms on his bomber-style jacket, which is the same as the prison service issue, and therefore he may have been a previous offender for sexual offences. And the most disturbing part of all is that it may form part of a series and he could well strike again.
So you think there may be a prison connection and that he may want to commit more crimes like this, which means it's really important to find him. What does he look like?
It's very disturbing, yes. His description is of a man 35 to 45, 5'6" to 5'9". He is receding with short light brown hair and greyish and balding.
I believe he had a Yorkshire accent too.
Yes, he did have a Yorkshire accent, and what we are seeking to achieve from Crimewatch this evening is to put all the pieces together of the stockings, the candlewick material, the description, and hopefully somebody can ring in and put a name to this man who must be caught.
Right, well, if any of those details seem at all familiar to you, I can't stress too much, please don't hesitate to ring. It's important to find this man as soon as possible. The number here, once again, is 0500 600 600, or you can call the incident room at Wakefield on free phone 0800 318 001. That's free phone 0800 318 001.
I'm just trying to see what's been happening so far. It has been relatively quiet in terms of number of calls, probably because we started around 10 o'clock, but on the Larry Burt murder, lots of sightings of similar bicycles. We're going to need quite a lot of working through. Someone's bought some similar binoculars, though we're not sure that they're the same ones. On incident desk, the Harrogate armed robbery, many names put forward for the identity of BJ, and someone thinks that they've got a really good identity for the artist's impression, which links up with something else. On the Jason Comerford murder, possible identity of the owner of the knife which we were talking about, and the market trader attack, possible sightings in the Midlands that may tie in with other things that we know. It's too soon to say how successful last month's reconstructions will turn out to be. Let's start with the murder of Shirley Leach in Bury in Manchester.
Hey, Darren, it's my favourite. Listen, who's it by again? It's that Culture Club.
Oh no, Gran, it's Culture Beat.
Culture Beat, that's it. Hey.
This case may have been linked with another attack now elsewhere in England, and there are 20 leads still active because of the Crimewatch appeal. Next, the Preston supermarket raid.
There's no more! You've got it all!
About 50 names are now being checked, and 2 of them look very promising. There are no arrests so far. On photocall, though, 2 direct results. A man wanted in connection with a death was traced from Manchester to London and gave himself up to the police. He's been charged with 2 offences. And another man wanted in connection with a deception was traced from Yorkshire down to Bournemouth. Several viewers saw him at a pub and also in a bookies nearby. He's been charged with obtaining property by deception. The 2 other photocall cases have both made great progress because of viewers' calls. More on them, we hope, next month. Now, with our 100th edition, in fact it's the 97th of Photocall, our Superintendent David Hatcher and Detective Constable Jackie Hames with this month's Photocall Faces.
Does this man look familiar? He's Robert Hawkes, and officers in Northumbria would like to speak to him in connection with a series of deceptions. Since September last year, a number of people have lost thousands of pounds when purchasing and selling classic and high-performance cars. They've been lured to several locations on the continent by a man using different names. Robert Hawkes is 45, 6'1", and often wears gold-rimmed glasses. He sometimes uses the name David Sully. If you know where he is, ring us tonight.
If you know this man, our colleagues in Lancashire would like to hear from you. Here he is, just before noon on February the 26th at a National and Provincial Building Society in Blackburn. Armed with a revolver, he demanded money from the cashier, placed it in a white carrier bag and made his escape. He's around 40, 5'9", with dark hair and was wearing a blue padded jacket with a white flash on the sleeve. If you know who he is, call us now.
Do you recognise this couple? Our colleagues in Manchester would like to speak to them in connection with a serious attack. In the early hours of Sunday the 30th of January, this woman went to a petrol station in Farnworth, Bolton. She left the garage with a male passenger in a green Vauxhall Cavalier, registration UND 804X. A short time later, 2 men were attacked in a nearby street. They both received serious facial wounds which needed several hours' surgery. The passenger in the green Cavalier is in his early 30s, 6 foot with dark cropped receding hair. The woman is about 25, 5'4" with fair shoulder-length hair. If you recognise either of them, please call.
If you work in the textile industry, you may have come across this man. He's Gulzar Ahmed, and colleagues in the northwest of England would like to speak to him in connection with a series of deceptions. During the past 4 years, colleagues in Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire and Cumbria have been investigating 5 companies who traded in fabrics obtained fraudulently. As a result, all 5 companies have been closed down. Gulzar Ahmed is 33 years old, 5'3", of slim build with dark hair and a moustache. He recently used the alias Shah Mumtaz. If you know where he is or can help with any of our photocall faces, please call us now.
And here's the number for any of our cases, 0500 600 600. Our free call number, 0500 600 600. Well, 10 years. 10 years from what started out as an experiment in social action public service broadcasting. We've learned a great deal in those 10 years. that giving viewers patterns of evidence is far more important than individual clues, even very good ones. People need to see that all the pieces of the picture fit together. We've learned that real crime is far stranger than fiction. You simply wouldn't believe the plots if someone wrote them for a thriller. Sherlock Holmes, eat your heart out. It all does seem a long, long time since Crimewatch started.
Standby studio.
Run BT1.
In Crimewatch UK.
Okay, we're on air. Mix and lighting change.
Crimewatch is based upon a West German format. It was brought to us, we liked the look of it, thought it had some merit and would appeal to a British television audience. That's the easy bit. The difficult bit, of course, is that you have to convince the police that they should cooperate, because if they don't cooperate, there's no programme.
I was somewhat sceptical right at the beginning, as were my senior colleagues. We thought we might be being used by the media. We were somewhat distrustful of the media at that particular time. But we found out that within a year there was great potential for this program, that it was shortening investigations, it was helping us to capture and convict people who otherwise would have escaped conviction and committed other offences. And within about 15 to 18 months at the longest, there was not a police service in the country who hadn't either featured a crime on Crimewatch or asked to feature a crime on Crimewatch.
So we're going to ask you to turn amateur detective and help out the professionals.
We had this bad rape inquiry that we were having trouble with, and it was a case of where do we go from here? Someone said Crimewatch. Well, we didn't even know it existed at that time. So he said, well, get your backside up there and see what you can do. So we did. Crimewatch.
Finally, a last-minute appeal today from Hampshire Police in connection with the crime which took place in the New Forest last Thursday.
We showed a van that had been seen in the area and a rough impression of the attacker.
Over 45 calls already on this particular one, just here alone.
Everybody was optimistic, and there was a feeling of euphoria that everyone would get a result, and certainly that was the case for me, because I was damn convinced I was going to get a result. There were a lot of calls on the night, but at the end I was a little bit down because I didn't get the call that I wanted. But within hours of returning, I was back up in London again as a result of an anonymous telephone call that came in through the programme telling us who the person was and where the van was. We got in touch with the Metropolitan Police a little bit quick. They went down, found the van, but unfortunately was told that the man had been dismissed. But all was not lost because he just happened to come back for his wages while they were there, and he got nicked.
Hello and welcome back. The response to Crimewatch this month has been enormous.
The phones have been humming. It's been a very exciting evening here so far.
We've been taking a rather low volume of calls here tonight.
We've had a hectic evening here and we've had an overwhelming response.
We've had a particularly large number of calls here this evening.
It's been ghostly quiet the last half hour here, which perhaps given the time is not all that surprising.
From what was actually quite a slow start, we've now had a flood of calls on all our cases. Right from the start, Crimewatch worked. Viewers amazed us by their ability to remember obscure details from months ago or sometimes even years ago. By programme 3, we had 9 million viewers. But we discovered size isn't everything. One particular night, the audience slumped to just 3 million.
Good evening. On behalf of the BBC, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight to Television Centre and to this edition of Crimewatch UK. I know that we've all been very concerned about events in the Gulf today, and I can now confirm that BBC One is going to be given over entirely to the outbreak of war tonight. But we have been given a slot on BBC Two.
We began to feel almost as if the fates were stacked against us.
And I remember the feeling of disappointment when we were told that we were being moved from BBC One and the reason why. I remember saying to one of my detectives, who on earth is going to want to watch Crimewatch on the day war broke out in the Gulf?
Inspector Allen had come to Crimewatch as a last resort. His case was one of murder, the death of a retired headmaster in South London.
1 minute left on interview, Sue. Certain items were missing from the house.
The switch to BBC Two found a witness who might have missed the programme had it been on BBC One as normal. And when D.I. Allen mentioned a television set that had been stolen from the victim's home, she checked her new TV.
Just get up now and look on the back and see what the serial numbers are. And if they match these, please telephone us now. I can tell those people they will be granted immunity from any prosecution, provided they can help us. We were overjoyed. It transpired that she'd bought the television set a couple of weeks previously from a local lad. This fitted in with everything we had done so far and was the final piece of evidence we needed. And as a direct result, 2 men were arrested on the 30th of January 91 and later charged with the murder of Ronald Harrison.
Finally, our Aladdin's Cave, our treasure trove of property which has been recovered by police and looking for its rightful owners.
Well, we start with a piece of pure Victorian nonsense.
Anyway, onto something a bit brighter.
All that glitters is not gold.
Most extraordinary of all, the golden disc. Well, Nigel Hayter Preston was not only watching, he rang the programme, got in his car, jumped in it, and he's just arrived in the studio. Oh, Nigel, congratulations.
Whatever people say about Britain becoming a less caring society, our experience is different. Time and again, witnesses have been keen to help, often taking part in reconstructions. On one occasion, 15 showed how they'd helped to have a go. Workers managed to foil a robbery, then tried to stop the getaway. In the confusion, one of the robbers got left behind.
Our business is in replacing side windows of cars. And the police often come to us before and after a theft. And this one was sparking the grey cells. And we thought to ourselves, perhaps we changed this piece of glass. So we checked our records. We had changed a piece of glass similar to that at the time of the robbery. And so we rang the police.
The car was traced to a hire company and the hirer traced to Ireland. 2 men were arrested. Sometimes, not only witnesses, but victims take part in the reconstructions, and when they do, they often have a lot of impact. For example, in March last year, we took up the case of an especially unpleasant indecent assault in Rochdale.
I wanted him to see that I'd survived, and I was willing to go onto the television to get him caught.
And this is the bike he left behind.
We showed the bike and a video fit of the attacker.
We were convinced the man would attack again, and we're in the process of working our way through the calls when 2 weeks after the programme there was a further attack. After that attack he went to his brother's address. His brother had recognised him from the Crimewatch programme and told him unless he gave himself up he would contact the police. In the early hours of the 30th of March he went to Harperhead police station and gave himself up, saying that I'm the person responsible for the indecent assault that appeared on Crimewatch.
We'd just come back from America and some friends met us at the airport, and the first thing he said to me was, "Have you heard the news?" And we said, "No." And I said, "It's not been arrested, has he?" He said, "Yeah." And I just couldn't believe it. It was so quick from the programme. And I just felt like getting out of the car and jumping up and down in the air, waving my hands about. It was unbelievable. I was so thrilled.
Finding people when we have pictures of their faces is one thing, but of course having voices has proved equally effective. For example, Michael Sams was recognised when we showed an artist's impression and with it played a tape-recorded phone call. He was the man that murdered Julie Dart and kidnapped Stephanie Slater.
On the night of the Crimewatch programme, I was in a hotel in the Isle of Wight, and all afternoon I'd sort of been watching the clock, and it'll be on in a few hours, and it was a great feeling of anticipation, and how will it go, and will people ring in, will anybody recognise him?
In a few minutes you'll hear the voice of the man who kidnapped Stephanie Slater. It's the voice of someone who may well have been involved in other major crimes, of course, including murder. For the first time, you can now hear what he sounds like.
Then they played the recording of his voice. I think that was probably the worst moment, because hearing it again, his voice was all I ever knew, you see. I never saw him. I can remember thinking, come on, please, somebody know him. The feeling was not that of celebration, it was that of relief more than anything. And I sat there and I thought, well, do I want to scream and shout and be happy? Do I want to cry? Do I want to laugh? What? And nothing came. No emotion came. It was just a numb feeling. But beneath the numbness was the overwhelming feeling of relief.
In fact, in early days, we didn't do cases which were front-page news. We thought they had enough publicity already. But Stephanie's and several other cases, including that of James Bulger, shows that Crimewatch reaches parts that other appeals somehow fail to reach. So do please try and help tonight.
And the number, once again, 0500 600 600 if you can help. We'll bring you a report on progress on Crimewatch Update, which is 10 minutes earlier than advertised, at 20 to midnight. If you can't stay up until then, do you remember this?
Last month, after 8 years, we dropped our farewell wishes, don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Frankly, I have to say, I thought the reassurance was wearing just a little bit thin. But I was plainly wrong. The result was a mailbag bulging with appeals to bring it back. There was a call to do the same, you may have seen it on Points of View. And as if that wasn't enough, with a perfectly straight face, a programme on ITV tried to swipe it as a catchphrase for themselves. Now that really would be something of a crime, so don't have nightmares. Please, as we said in our very first programme, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
Hello, good evening. Well, it would have been nice if our 100th edition had been crowned with some very quick successes. It doesn't appear that that is the case. A fairly slow start tonight, perhaps not surprising because we started so late. Incident Desk, though, is looking reasonably strong. There's some very good information on the Wendy Speaks murder. A bit disappointing on the Larry Burt case, and a bit disappointing too on Photocall. But let's go into the details, Sue.
Well, our first case was the murder of Wendy Speaks in Wakefield. On the day Wendy was killed, several people had noticed a man hanging around near where Wendy lived.
Hello, I was wondering if you could help me.
And shortly after 6 o'clock, somebody working in the factory across the road from Wendy's house saw her talking to a similar-looking man at her front door. Wendy's body was discovered the next day after she failed to turn up for work. And Mr Taylor, you've been taking the calls. In fact, I have to say you seem to have had the best response of all our cases tonight.
Yes, we've had well over 100 calls here and an equal number at the incident room. The thing that concerns me is that some of the female callers obviously don't want to give the name, but the information that they're given at the moment we can't do anything with, and we'd like them to ring back on the free phone number at the incident room, which will come up at the end of the programme.
And you can promise them discretion?
Absolutely.
Right, so please have the courage to come forward. Have you had much useful information on the shoes?
Well, the one call that we really need on the shoes is the vital call. The shoes were found at the scene, at the address, and we really need to find the person who left them outside that charity shop, and that call hasn't come in yet.
Right, and it's R.P. Ellen in Oxford Street, W1, that it says on the shoes. Anyone suggested who the man might be?
We've had several calls from prison officers, serving prisoners, a really large number of people suggesting people, and we shall work our way through them very quickly.
So you've got quite a lot of work there. Do you think you're going to find this man?
I'm absolutely certain we're going to find him. Time and patience I have plenty of, and I will find him.
Okay. And a quick look at his description again.
Yes, he's 35 to 45 years of age, 5 foot 6 inches to 5'9", medium build, with dark hair, greying at the sides and balding.
You seem quite confident about finding him.
I am. I have no doubts about that at all.
Mr Taylor, thank you very much.
Well, we're not quite so confident here on Protocol going through it, are we, Jackie?
Well, it's still early. Perhaps we'll get the call that we want. But firstly, Robert Hawkes. We've had sightings of someone similar all over the country. We wanted to speak to him about some deceptions with regard to high-performance cars. But if you know where he is now, please ring.
Blackburn Robert?
4 names suggested, none the same. Again, if you know him, please give us a call now.
Called to Ahmed, who was wanted in connection with a deception inquiry.
He's been seen in and around Yorkshire, which in fact does fit in, as you heard earlier, with what we knew already. So, but again, if you know where he is tonight, perhaps please give us a call before midnight.
Now, one of the cases does look much more promising. Tell us about that.
Yes, the double assault up in Bolton, unusual case. 2 callers have suggested names for both the man and the woman, and in fact 3 callers have just suggested names for the man on his own. So that looks a lot more promising, certainly.
Thanks, Jackie.
Well, David Hatcher, veteran of 100 Crimewatch updates, has the details on tonight's incident desk cases. David, first of all, the murder of Barry Stubbings in London. Did anybody recognise that man in the baseball cap near Liverpool Street Station?
Sadly, not certain at this stage, so what we do want to do is to identify him. We've had a dozen calls. One of them suggested it was a girl, but we do know it was a man. He was wearing a baseball cap, 5'8" to 9", 30 years, fair to blonde hair. We know it's a guy because he was seen with the victim in the Ploy Pillin Thai restaurant in Spitalgate just after that shot was taken. There's a suggestion too that he may be a male prostitute. If you do know him or you know anything of that man seen with Barry, please call us. There is a very substantial reward for information leading to the conviction.
Then there was the case of the young man who was stabbed to death in Manchester last February.
Yes, we've had lots of calls on that one too, mostly telling us where we can buy those hunter knives. We're more interested in, of course, who's lost that one. So anyone who's had a knife like that and hasn't got it anymore is what we'd like to hear about. Several names suggested on the picture there, a couple in particular which officers are very interested in.
Have you had many calls on that series of armed robberies on post offices in South London?
About 15 calls there. 6 names have been given though, all different so far. One is very good with all the details, and we know that the individual is a violent person, so the officers are following that one up straight away.
Right. We showed a short reconstruction of an armed robbery at a jeweller's in Harrogate. In fact, there'd been 2 attacks there in the past 6 months.
Yeah, numerically, the best response. We've had 60 calls here to the studio, 30 to the incident room. Some very good information.
We've got enough, we've got enough. Plenty of time, BJ. Plenty of time.
One name has been suggested 12 times for that BJ clue, and again we've got some aspects linking to that name and address that links into other factors the officers have in their possession. So that one is really promising. A couple of suggestions on the gunman, but we'd like more obviously to identify that artist's impression of that creature.
Right. And finally there was an attack on 2 market traders in a pub in Warwick just about 3 weeks ago.
Dozen calls there, several names suggested again. One in particular the officers are very happy about, so a lot to wait for on incident.
Quite positive, all that. Right, thanks.
Well, finally, the murder of Larry Burt. Larry lived in Ramsgate, Kent, and used to take a train to London every now and then, often cycling around the city. One weekend 3 months ago, he was killed in the East End by the edge of the River Thames. Deputy Inspector Michael, at first it looked really disappointing. I think you've only had about 40 calls so far, maybe edging up to about 50 now. There has been one quite interesting little group of calls there.
That's right. The volume of calls are somewhat disappointing, but we've had a few good pointers in the calls that have come in.
Some suggesting that there might be a gay connection in this.
That's right. We're not preoccupied with people's sexual preferences or their sexuality. However, we know that members of the gay community have provided quality information before on these major inquiries, which has played a substantial part in resolving the cases. So we would appeal to the gay community and anybody else who saw or met with Larry to please get in touch with us.
This is in the East End of London, probably the East End, around St Catherine's Dock on Saturday the 26th of February. In the reconstruction, we showed he had a bike. It was thought that he'd brought his bike to London. You've also now had a British Rail employee ring and say the bike was not on the train.
The train guard is fairly sure that the bike wasn't there, so in that case he must have caught the underground or a taxi, or even a friend must have given him a lift to Wapping.
Tell us about the home video that's been taken. There was a scout leader who's taken a home video in the area, in fact I think in the very street.
In St Catherine's Way, a home video was taken, so obviously we're hopeful that if Larry Burt was in the area at that time, we will get something useful from that.
Let's hope so. Mr Michael, thank you.
And that's it for our 100th programme. Our lines are closing just about now, so if you can offer any help with tonight's cases, there'll be alternative numbers on the screen in just a moment. Do please call if you can.
Just before we go, there's been much talk in recent weeks on the subject of fear of crime. Newspapers, magazines, cinema and TV have been said to have increased fear of crime. You may be interested to see the latest findings of the British Crime Survey, which is the biggest and the best insight into crime in Britain. Fear of crime has not increased since surveys started in 1982. It really is worth saying, don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
Welcome to another crime scene.